Excellent. Good. Well, great to see you on. I see we've got a couple of other people just popped in. So Matt Busby, welcome. So what we're going to do now is to kick off. Do use the chat, as some of you have started to do so already. But you know, there's a lot of great businesses and business owners here on the call. So do make an effort to, if you spot somebody that you think that would be great to catch up with or link up with, then feel free to use the chat to do that, either privately or publicly, as well as the fact that when we go into our breakouts, we'll get obviously more of a chance to then talk to people individually. This is what we've got sorted out for this morning. So we've got a couple of hours. The first little bit is around the theme, and we'll go through the topic of the day, which, as I mentioned earlier, is around value propositions. But then we've got a couple of great select member insights. So we've got a couple of short presentations from Hannah Hatfield from Make More Noise, but also then Philip Ingalls from Waxter. And that's more about how they apply the theme of the value proposition within their businesses and some particular insights within their businesses. And then what we're going to do is then break for the bulk of the session, which is into our breakout sessions, where we'll go into rooms of around about 6 people, and Caroline will busily behind the scenes sort that out so that we can go into those rooms. And the focus of those sessions then is around making sure everybody gets a turn in the spotlight. And it's about collaboration. It's about meeting, sharing, and collaborating. So within those, if you've got a challenge that you'd like the others to help you with, then raise that. It might be that you want to spend a bit more time thinking about the value proposition, but that's the idea. There is to see how we can help each other, see if there's opportunities for collaboration, and then we'll return just before 11 o'clock for probably give a little bit more time actually, just for a wrap up for about 10 minutes, so that we've got just final wrap ups and any closing remarks on and takeaways as we go. You know the idea now. You've been on enough Zoom calls. You must have been from the online etiquette point of view, but please do make sure you're on mute when you're not actually speaking. Try and avoid disruptions as much as possible. As I said before, do feel free to use that chat room to pick up connections and take any conversations any further as we go through. Confidentiality in terms of those breakouts, you know, please do treat it with respect. Chatham House rules apply, so that you can feel comfortable to raise things, but do make sure that we treat that with respect. Do look to challenge other people. You know, if they think their thinking needs a little bit of a gentle challenge, then please do that, and please be prepared to be challenged on the flip side as well, and always be open and looking for those takeaways, really trying to think about what you can apply and take back to your business. And this is not about selling. You know, we're not about selling in those breakouts into the room. You know, it's much more trying to help each other in about selling. So try and avoid the direct sell side of things. And if you do have to leave a breakout room early, which we understand may happen, but hopefully won't, we'd really like you to stay for the whole session. But if you really do have to leave, then please pop back to the main room and let Caroline know that you need to go, so that we can make sure we don't leave somebody with too light in the breakout rooms. I think we'll skip that for the moment. What's it all about? Well, the ScaleUp Club, as I sort of hinted earlier, it's around meeting, sharing, collaborating, and learning. That's really what it's about meeting some great people. It's about sharing some ideas, sharing what we're doing, but also experiences and challenges, but looking for opportunities to collaborate as well, but also a little bit of learning. You know, we try and have a little bit of learning each time, and that's a theme that we might just want to think about and just take forward. Bit of gentle learning. You know, it's not for stuff, not too much theory. Those of you that know us know that we talk about the scale up journey, and about the challenges of moving from the various steps to another, and the fact that it's not just a straight line or a wiggly line growth, but there are defined stages in the scaling up of a business, and that we know that in all of those stages, even if we're trying to maximize where we are on one of those pillars, there are 4 key pillars that are really important at all of those stages. And that's having the right strategy, the right business model. We need to be able to find, hire, attract the right people. We need to be able to get the right people to do the right things. That's the execution bit. And we need to manage the cash along the way. So we pick a theme each time from one of those pillars. A little bit of stats you may or may not be aware of, but they're certainly stark and really made me look once I realized these numbers. But only 4% of businesses in this country scale beyond the 9 employee level. So those of you that are beyond that level already, you're in the top 4% of businesses. And in fact, if you look at the numbers for scaling over 50, then it's less than 1%. It's about 0.7% scale beyond 50. So 96% of businesses in this country have fewer than 9 employees. And essentially what we're about, and part of ScaleUp Club is about, is just helping to, what we want to do is to move the dials on those numbers. We want to increase the 4% and the 1%. So that's what we're about. Just looking back a little bit, the theme that we looked at last month was around how to and why you need to identify opportunities for growth. And for those of you that were with us, we looked at the Ansoff matrix and how we might apply that to our businesses. And we also looked at something that we developed called the DREAM tool, as to just an acronym as to how to look at where that business is going to come from. So in terms of ditching any clients you might want to ditch, but re-engaging, so that's a lapsed clients bit, expanding, acquiring and maintaining. And using that as a little tool to help us to really identify where the business is going to come from, essentially. So this time around, we're looking at how to build your value proposition. And once you've got a really strong idea of your focus on your key products and services, then what we then need to do is to build a really strong value proposition or a really strong story, essentially, that forms the basis of our marketing and our sales activities. And otherwise, all the marketing in the world isn't going to get us very far. And we often see businesses, and we're guilty of it ourselves, where we think particular tactics maybe aren't working. Maybe it's not the fault of the tactic. Often it may be the fault that we haven't really got the value proposition nailed properly. So we need to develop a value proposition essentially for all of our key products and services. So anything where the product and service is different, where it's addressing different target audience, different needs, we really need to have a different value proposition for those. And it's definitely an exercise that is worth going through. We know that 2 of the key things that businesses struggle with when they're trying to scale is, one is finance and proper management of the numbers of the business, but the other is marketing and getting a constant and consistent stream of quality leads. We tend to rely on ad hoc mechanisms up to a certain point, but beyond that, we need to have a really good, reliable mechanism for generating leads. So we refer to this story as I said, as the value proposition, and a good value proposition is going to synthesize those reasons why somebody should buy from you, essentially. And done well, not only will it form the basis of most of your marketing messaging, but it also is a really useful tool then or briefing document, if you like, if you're dealing with an agency. So we're dealing with a marketing agency like Citizen, then it's great if you can supply them already with a value proposition, or they can help you to develop one. But it's great if you've got one, if you're briefing them in using an external agency. And you should be able to put together a reasonable value proposition from everything you already know about your customers and your offerings. We've all been in business for a little while, so we've got basically our ideas of a value proposition. But it's always worth testing it if you haven't thought about doing this, because sometimes you'll find that what we thought was a really strong value proposition actually isn't that important to a customer, or elements of it are not that important to a customer. And maybe vice versa, you might find things actually that that you haven't thought of as being important that really come through. And in fact, we've just found that recently with some video case studies that we've been doing, is that there's been some themes that have been coming out of those that we hadn't necessarily included in our thinking. Essentially, a value proposition consists of these 7 key elements. So actually you can simply use these, and you can brainstorm around the different elements of it and put it together, and it can read a bit like a story when you've done it. But essentially those elements are: who's it for? That's clearly really key thing. The closer you can define who it's for, the better. What are their needs or their pains? Sometimes people prefer the language of pains, but what are the pains that we're really trying to address? Then, okay, what are the features? What is it that we're providing? But then specifically the benefits of what the benefits that we're offering against those needs that we've identified. But then consider what the alternatives are, and we sometimes miss this. You know, what are the options for a potential client to you? If they don't use your service, what might it be that they would do? And in some cases, that's the alternative is nothing. You know, they don't necessarily have to have your services, you know, unless you're an accountant or somebody, when everybody has to have an accountant. You know, if you're a business coach, let's just say, like from our point of view, nobody has to have one. There's no rule that says you have to have one. So an alternative would be to do nothing. So don't forget that. But what are the primary alternatives? What could they use instead of you? But then what makes you different? What makes us different from those alternatives? In a way that we think will resonate, obviously, with the prospects, with potential clients. And then what proof can we offer? So what's the credibility? So if you put together a little story around those, you can start to see how it might read, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But essentially, that's what it is. So I'm not going to go through too much detail. We'll produce an ebook which we'll send out to everybody afterwards with a little bit more details if that would help here. But essentially, with the idea of who's it for, the more specific you can be, the better. And you'll have heard of people talk about client avatars, but the more specific you can identify the characteristics of your ideal client, the better this is going to be. So typically, you know, they're going to be, a segment is going to share similar needs and characteristics. It's going to be of a size that's worth going after, and it's going to be identifiable and reachable. There's no good in identifying a segment that there's just no chance that you're going to be able to reach. And of course, it needs to be big enough that you can that it's worth you going for. The needs, fine. The pain points, as we've talked about, you will know from your customers, it's always a good idea to ask some of your good customers as to maybe what their key needs and pains were when they started with you, if you're in any doubt. But you want to identify some really strong pain points. Then, okay, what are the features of your service and product? And sometimes you might have different levels. You might have 2 or 3 levels: a good, better, best, a gold, silver, platinum, whatever it might be. And you might have different features within those, and even different names for those. But what then becomes really important is to tease out the benefits. And we all know really that the way you get to a benefit is essentially taking a feature and saying, so what, you know, or what that means is. So if you turn it around in that way, then you can make it into a benefit. But again, against those needs that you want. We've talked about the primary alternatives. What else could they do? And it doesn't have to be necessarily a direct competitor to you. It could be a substitute. It doesn't have to be something that is. So let's just take the channel tunnel. You know, it doesn't have to be, or let's take ferries. You know, it doesn't have to be other ferry companies to cross the channel tunnel. To cross the channel. The channel tunnel is a substitute or an alternative. It's not a direct ferry, if you like, but it's a substitute. Or even taking an aeroplane is something like this. Not the best of examples, but they don't necessarily be narrow and exactly, and they are exactly like us and they're a competitor. Think about substitutes, if you like, something that's an alternative in that way. And then what makes you different? And if you start off with only we, only we do this. You know, that's a great way of getting to something that you really is different, that differentiates you. But try and limit it to things that are really important, obviously, to your customers. There's no point in saying, yeah, well, we're different because all our vans are yellow, if actually nobody cares 2 hoots about the fact that your vans are yellow. And then finally, the credibility side of things. What proof can you offer? And we all talk about testimonials, video case studies. Obviously, they're really good ways, but most of your competitors are probably doing those as well. So think creatively, perhaps, about how can we really demonstrate that what we do, that we really do what we do, and that we are credible in saying what we do. So that's essentially it. So we talked about case studies and referrals, but how can you make yourself even more believable? So there's a very quick whiz through the value proposition. thoroughly recommend that you take it, take some of those ideas, have a rethink. You know, we will all have some elements of value propositions together, but we may not have captured it in this way, and it's definitely worth taking those down, having a look at each of those sections, and just making sure that it flows and we're really clear about it. Because as I said right at the beginning, often what we've seen is that some of the reasons why some of our marketing doesn't work is not necessarily down to the fault of the tactic. It's down to the fault of whether we've got this proposition right in the first place. And as I say, think about testing it with existing clients. You know, have a go at doing this, either develop it with them or develop it separately, but then take it to some of your best clients and bounce it off them and just see what they would say. And then you can put it all together in a nice little story about how your value proposition works. So there we go. That's all I wanted to say really about the value proposition. Have a think about it, see what takeaways you've got from that you can apply back in your business. There's plenty of people, I think, on this call that could help you with developing your value proposition if you would like a bit of outside help with that. What I'm going to do now is to introduce Hannah and Philip. Hannah Hatfield first from Make More Noise PR. They're both select members, and they're just going to spend a couple of minutes talking through, well, five minutes or so, talking through some ideas as to how they might have applied things in their business, and just take another look from more of a sort of insight point of view within the businesses. So Hannah is somebody that we've been working with for a little while now, and Hannah and her team are fantastic on the PR side of things. So Hannah, can I hand over to you to talk us through your insights, please?
Yes, you can. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully you can see that. I might just leave it like that. Can everyone see a PowerPoint presentation of some form with Make More Noise branding on? Perfect. So we are a PR and comms agency headquartered in Birmingham. And we work with lots of different businesses across the UK, both B2B and B2C. I founded the business in 2015, and one of my first clients was a gentleman called Mark Wright, who some of you may know, particularly through talks with Kevin, who won the Apprentice. And he runs a digital marketing agency called Climb Online, which he founded obviously in partnership with Lord Sugar. And when we first met, we were both working for a hotel actually called the Wood Norton, which is based in Worcestershire. I was doing the PR and comms for them, and Mark was doing digital marketing, and we got talking about his PR. And essentially he was saying that he was getting destroyed by the press, hadn't long won the Apprentice, everything was extremely negative. So on review, we found that there was a lot of kind of headlines around things he would say about random Z-list celebrities like Katie Hopkins, such as her being useless and knackered, or she's disgusting and knackered, which is probably even worse. So basically his PR team were setting him up interviews with good publications, but more tabloid type publications like the Mirror and the Express, and because he is quite blunt in conversation, he would end up saying something negative or irrelevant essentially about other people, which would then result in a headline in the Sun, such as Duncan Bannatyne ruined my love life, which is completely not only negative and looks doesn't basically do much for his reputation, but actually has nothing to do with digital marketing and nothing to do with his business. So after a review of a lot of publications, we found this consistency in that he would have an interview with a tabloid journalist, he would end up saying something negative, it would then be a headline. His reputation was obviously quite negative as a person, but obviously within the digital marketing industry as well, nobody kind of respected him at all. And he was essentially booed onto the stage when doing trade talks, as opposed to kind of clapped and applauded, which is what he would be now. So we sat down and we looked at who he is and what he wanted to be known as, and essentially what his value proposition is as a business. So he wanted to be known as an inspiring entrepreneur, the founder of one of the UK's fastest growing digital marketing agencies, in himself, a leading digital marketeer, but he also wanted to be known as the most successful apprentice winner, as by this time he was tracking really well in terms of his first year of turnover, and actually remains the only one to have ever turned over in excess of £1 million during his first year in business, and the only one to have made profit in his first year in business as well. In addition to that, he also wanted a positive reputation around Climb Online. So he wanted them to be known as a leading digital marketing agency, which specialised in SEO, paid media and social media advertising. And he also wanted to consistently show how they did that through PR activity that showed client wins or case studies or reported consistently on agency growth. So the next few slides just demonstrate the difference in the PR content. So we got rid of kind of we don't let him talk to the sun basically anymore, or to the mirror, and we just do positive content around his business, what his business has achieved. We do a lot of thought leadership content, so advice for other business owners or digital marketing content, and as a result of that, he is now seen in things like the Telegraph. For example, he was picked in the Telegraph to do a campaign for Amex business, just talking about how his business journey and how he's grown from essentially a backpacker in Australia to winning The Apprentice to now running a multi-million-pound digital marketing agency. The next slide, I hope the slides are moving as I'm talking. The next slide is an example of a client win. So they won TikTok, which I think obviously most of you will probably know, which is a social media platform. And actually every time we send out a press release about a client win, it results in an influx of new clients requesting to work with them, because obviously if they're working with brands like TikTok or Protein World was another one, other businesses obviously would deem them a good agency to work with, and as a result of that they win a lot of clients. In addition, we've entered him for a lot of awards, and he's been listed on Forbes 30 Under 30 twice. He's won the Great British Entrepreneur Award, the national one as well for the best team of the year. He's been listed on startups. They've won the Growing Amazon Business Awards, and he's won Entrepreneur of the Year across multiple categories. That obviously wouldn't have been possible if he maintained his track record of speaking to the sun about random celebrities, because obviously, aside from making him look a bit of an idiot, does absolutely nothing for his business. So from a PR and comms perspective, it was really about shaping what he wanted to say strategically in the public domain, that not only reflects positively on him as a business leader, but also his business. So why they're good at digital marketing, what they do, how they can help other business owners in growing their own companies through digital marketing activity. And things like case studies and client wins and business growth stories, although some people kind of deem them a bit egotistical, they actually really work, because it's not, it's essentially telling people how you're good at something and why. And that, we have found, supports business growth. So hopefully that summarizes it nicely.
Brilliant, thank you, Hannah. Do you want to just stop sharing the screen? Can we just give a Zoom round of applause to Hannah for that, please? Thank you. And I'm going to do something a bit. I think we've got time for a couple of questions for Hannah before we go to Philip, if there are. So just want to. So Jason, you've got your hand up. Thank you. Oh, did you not mean to do that, Jason?
That was my applause.
Oh, it's your applause. I beg your pardon. Well done. Okay, good. Anybody got a quick question for Hannah?
Yes.
Yes, John.
Yeah. Okay, Hannah. Hi, Hannah. If you had to name one thing you did that helped Mark the most, what would that be?
Vetting. No, I was going to say vetting is interviews, but that probably was a good thing. But sitting down, I think the main thing was actually getting him to understand. I think he had it in his head that all PR was good PR. Initially, so as long as he was in the press, he thought it was a positive thing, particularly as they were national headlines. So it was sitting down and working out what messaging he actually wanted in the media. So from a PR perspective, if you consistently put in press that he's the most successful apprentice winner, and he runs a successful digital marketing agency that work with brands like TikTok, for example, the more and more people read and engage with that, the more they obviously deem that to be true. So it was kind of changing his opinion around what he wanted from PR in the first place and how that could actually support his business objectives.
Okay, good. Maybe one more. Yes, Doug Anderson.
Yeah. Hi Hannah. Was there a strategic plan you put together for him, or did he just get what you could with regard to who he was going to interview and that sort of thing, or where he was going to put the social media together?
There was a strategic plan in that we worked out from an objectives point of view what he wanted to achieve. So Forbes, for example, was one of his main things that he wanted to achieve, and he still wanted to achieve like awards, for example. But obviously, if there's no positive content around him and his business and how the business has grown, because Forbes in particular, that is like a Google exercise for them. It's about profile and it's about positive profile. So if there was none of that in the first place, it wouldn't have been achieved. So we kind of looked at what his end goal was and then backtracked, if that makes sense, in terms of the type of communications that he wanted to be in. But any form of comms is about consistency.
Very good. All right, so I think, you know, some great insights there into specifically how being really clear about your messaging, but essentially there's all the elements of the value proposition within there somewhere, and then being very clear about putting those messaging across. So really good insights. Thanks, Hannah. If anybody does have any more questions as they come up, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm sure Hannah will respond to those in the chat, or pick up with Hannah either during or after the meeting. You know, please do. So now I'm going to introduce Philippe. So Philippe runs Waxter, and we've worked with Philippe for a number of years now, and he does some fantastic and amazing things. And you know, he talks about the wow factor in marketing and in animated videos in particular. But and so I'm sure we're going to have a slightly different look at the value proposition from Philippe. So Philippe, over to you if you want to share your screen.
Thank you, Kevin. Hi, I'm Philip Ingles. I run a company called Waxter, and we help companies explain the value of what they offer more effectively using creative storytelling. So we will look at how to present your value proposition in the midst of an alien attack. Okay, so let's assume you've got your value proposition all worked out. You run into the world with this shiny new value proposition, convinced that you are the new rock star in the world of value offerings. Crowds will gather, there will be mass conversions, and the money will rain down from heaven. Here's the problem. It doesn't work that way. The universe really hates you. It wants you lonely and isolated in a sea of noise. So imagine your ideal client is like that movie hero that is trying to survive an alien invasion. The world is ending. She must fight her way through hordes of aliens and that want to suck out her brain, and only has a few hours to get to her ship. And there, in the midst of all that chaos, is you trying to share your value proposition with her. She's a little bit busy. In fact, it's not just you. Thousands of others are also trying to share their value propositions with our hero. So to stay on mission, the hero has a very robust system to help her focus. The first instrument she's got is an attention filter that prevents information overload. Then she also has a curiosity gauge to detect potential value. So it asks, is this of value to me, this thing that I'm looking at the moment? This gauge is connected to an attention timer set to 3 seconds. That's all you have to get through the curiosity gauge. Then she has an interest meter that continually assesses the quality of the value she's looking at. The moment that value drops below a certain measure, her attention is aborted. And then lastly, she has a not now abort button. So even if you get through all the other blockers, she might still press this button because the time is not right. So here is what you do. To get through the attention filter, you have to differentiate the way in which you present your value proposition. That red little block gets you through the attention filter because it's different from the attention competitors, especially block 32. So a few of the things that you can apply is go visual, make clever use of color, use moving images like video or GIFs, use media formats the competitor isn't using, do things that are unexpected, and create a persistent presence. Then, to push the curiosity gauge into the green, you need to create curiosity that is boosted by anticipation and emotional triggers. To learn, the human mind wants to connect the dots. So give it a dot that is loaded with curiosity. And if you add emotion to that dot, you'll have them hooked. So what this image might imply is unless you use us, your value proposition is at risk. The dots the mind wants to connect is, what is this about? Who is this monster? what's going to happen to this character. So present your value proposition with curiosity in mind. This is where things such as the tagline in your value proposition, your content headline, your opening statement, the title screen of your video, and the visuals that you use play a critical role. Now, to keep the interest meeting in the green, you have to create content that is engaging. This is where storytelling comes in. We all tell our stories when we share our value proposition to somebody. Well-written stories create a persistent sense of anticipation. We want to know what will happen next, connect the dots, and find out how the story will conclude. And while the story keeps your potential client engaged, you have all that captured attention to share your value proposition. So here you look at things like telling your story through text, images, audio. So if you just, at a networking conference have to present it verbally, you can use video, animation, VR, and even games. And that brings us to the not now abort button. We all know that the point where you manage to get through the attention filter and share your value proposition is more than likely not to be the time when the hero client is ready to get into a new spacesuit or change a rocket pack for a better one. This is why you need to make a memorable impression. And there are many strategies to do this, but that is for story for another time. Thank you for your time and attention.
Brilliant. Thank you, Philippe. So we could have a Zoom round of applause for Philippe, please. That would be great. And if you could stop sharing your screen.
Yeah.
Super. Thank you. And I think we did have time maybe for one or two questions, but I think you can start to see what where Philippe's coming from in terms of really making some real impact then out of that value proposition and making sure that we make those, essentially I suppose, those first impressions at 0.7 seconds, and then getting the interest and the desire from there. So time for one or two quick questions for Philippe before we start going to breakout rooms. Anybody want to ask a question? I can't see anybody. Oh, Melanie.
Well, I don't want to ask a question, but I just loved your slides and your animation, Philippe. It really brings the whole concept alive and kind of demonstrates to people kind of visually how they can go through that value proposition. Really useful. Are we going to get the slides afterwards? Are we, Philippe?
Yeah, I can definitely share it.
Because I just think it just really shows the concept. Thanks, Philippe. Really good.
So a lot of Philippe's work, with things like animated 3D animated explainer videos, for example, around then taking that value proposition, especially in markets where there's not much differentiation, and then separating yourself from that differentiation with a really good animated 3D video is some of the great stuff that Philippe does. So, all right, brilliant. Thank you very much, both to Hannah and Philippe, then for putting those presentations together and delivering those so well. So thank you very much indeed. So what we're going to do now is we're going to think about breaking out into our breakout sessions, and what we'll have then is essentially just over an hour. So we'll come back at 10 to 11 for final closing remarks. So just over an hour. There's around about 6 people in each room, so that roughly about 10 minutes in the spotlight, if you like. Make sure that the brief facilitator, there's a facilitator for each one, and make sure that you allow a few minutes for a break as well, to get a pee and a tea at some point within your time there, and then we'll return for those wrap ups and those closing remarks. If you want some guides, and Caroline I think is putting these in the chat, and the chairs of the rooms have got these questions as well. If you want to just think about some of the value proposition questions that we talked around, but so who's your target audience, the needs, what you provide, the benefits, prime alternatives, what you differentiate, and how can you establish credibility. So thinking about those sort of questions, maybe, if that's what you'd like to talk about, but don't feel that you have to restrict your conversations to the value proposition. If you've got a challenge, whether that be an opportunity or an issue that you would like the help of the group on, then please feel free to bring that up and to do that. So are we ready with the breakout rooms, Caroline?
We are very ready.
Brilliant. So if we could set those up, and you'll be fired off into your rooms.